Imagine this. You're standing in a quiet gallery, alone with a 17th century portrait. The plaque on the wall mentions a word you've never really noticed before, Pentimento, and explains that X-rays revealed an earlier face beneath the paint, a different mouth, a different gaze, a life the artist once intended and then covered. You tilt your head. On the surface, a polished aristocrat. Underneath, a rough draft still staring through the varnish. Which one is the real sitter? More unsettling, which one is the real you? You've painted your own life carefully. Dependable, good listener, team player. Your friends would happily sign the label. But every so often, under fluorescent office lights or in the glow of your kitchen at 11:47 p.m., something underneath blinks. You watch yourself tell Emma, "It's fine, really," while your jaw says, "Absolutely not." You hear Alex compliment a colleague and feel a tiny, sour bubble rise before you can cork it. You promise to speak up in the meeting and instead smile like a friendly screensaver. Who's choosing in those moments the curated you on the surface, or the draft layer the world never got to approve? You've learned to keep it civilized. When jealousy taps your shoulder, you write a congratulatory text with 3 sparkle emojis. When anger rumbles, you call it concern. When sadness sits down beside you, you rebrand it as tired. You aren't lying so much as translating, but translations have costs. Replacing no with maybe is like swapping a seatbelt for a ribbon. It looks nicer, right up until it doesn't. Look closer at the portrait. The visible face is elegant, sure, but it's also a little airless, like a room with the windows sealed. The hidden face is messier, more alive. You can almost see the brushstrokes where the painter changed their mind. Imagine if the canvas could talk. I am both, surface and sketch, mask and muscle, varnish and pulse. Why then do you spend so much energy pretending you're only the top layer? Let's be honest, some of the nicest things you do arrive with a receipt. You offer to help and feel quietly owed. You agree to plans and fantasize about canceling from the parking lot. You play peacemaker and wonder why your migraines have a calendar. It's not that you're a fraud, it's that your bottom layer has needs, plain, human, inconvenient, and it doesn't vanish just because your top layer learned manners. Consider Morgan. She's the office diplomat, a 5-star plate spinner. People adore her. Her dentist, however, knows the truth from her molars. Or Peter, the reliable rock who never needs anything. His phone battery dies for entire weekends. He calls it minimalism, but the vibe is witness protection. Or Grace, who loves her kids with the intensity of a small star and still, once a week, wants to get in her car and drive to a hotel that has no crayons. These aren't moral failures. They are unnegotiated truths trying to renegotiate. And yes, you've tried the respectable fixes, habit trackers, new you podcasts, productivity confessions whispered into Bluetooth earbuds. You have a color-coded calendar that looks like a Skittles spill. It helps until it doesn't. Because when your shadow wants a say, it will not book an appointment through your scheduling app. It will speak through the only channels it fully trusts. Your body, tight jaw, shallow breath. Your impulse, the too quick, yes, the too sharp, no. Your dreams, that hallway you keep running down that never has a door. Now the impolite thought. What if the parts of you hide are not villains, but exiled talents? Anger might be your unused sword for protecting boundaries. Envy might be the compass pointing toward what you're built to pursue. Control might be the frightened child asking for safety with grown-up words. You don't have to unleash them, you have to listen to them. Unheard instruments don't stop making sound, they just start playing from the basement. The museum metaphor won't leave you alone because it's too accurate. You've practiced the persona, the public face, until it could pass a background check. But the shadow, the unchosen, unpraised traits keep shining through in X-ray moments. The text you didn't send, the joke that landed too hard, the sudden frost between your ribs when someone else gets what you wanted. That doesn't make you bad, it makes you complete, and completion is awkward until it becomes art. So the question that matters at 2 a.m. and at quarterly reviews and at dinner with your mother is not, how do I silence the bottom layer? It's, how do I paint with both? How do you live a life where the surface and the sketch are allies instead of saboteurs, where the smiling you isn't a muzzle and the fierce you isn't a wrecking ball? Before we reach for answers, notice the itch to rush. Give me the 5 steps, the framework, the app. That's the surface speaking again, eager to fix the underground with a to-do list. The deeper work begins somewhere else, somewhere older, slower, softer, not with a hammer, but with a light. Take one last look at the portrait. Imagine the painter setting down their brush, stepping back, and deciding not to erase the underpainting entirely, letting it inform the final expression, giving the face a soul instead of a sticker. That's the move. Now, if you're willing, we'll switch on the X-ray. Not to shame the hidden image, but to understand what it wants and why it keeps tapping the frame. Ready? Let's lift the varnish. Step a little closer to that X-ray image of the painting. The surface face is what Jung would call your persona, the social mask that gets invited to meetings and family dinners. It's not fake, it's curated. The underpainting is your shadow traits and impulses you learned were too much, not nice, or not safe, and so you tucked them away. You didn't delete them, you can't. You just pushed them off stage. Yet offstage actors still memorize lines. When the lights flicker, they wander on. Where did your shadow come from? Start with your first theater, family. Maybe anger got you punished, so you learned to be agreeable. Maybe sadness earned you silence, so you learned to be impressive. The system rewarded the child who made life easier for the adults. You became a specialist in being fine. The brain, faithful servant that it is, laminated that specialty into a script. Be pleasant, be useful, be small. By middle school, the script runs itself. By adulthood, you can perform it in your sleep, often literally, as your jaw grinds through the night. Add attachment patterns. Anxious hearts lean forward, over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-functioning, because closeness once felt conditional. Avoidant hearts lean back under-sharing, under-needing, because closeness once felt overwhelming. Both styles produce shadows. The anxious disown anger, it scares people away. The avoidant disown need, it scares them. Then life, generous and ironic, gives you partners and bosses who perfectly press those buttons. Now layer in culture. In English-speaking societies, we worship nice. Polite emails, conflict avoidance, smiling through discomfort. The politeness economy pays out in short-term safety and long-term distance. Add social media's like machine and you get a refined persona factory. You're encouraged to be legible, approved, brand consistent. Where does the unruly energy go? Into the basement. Or, more accurately, into the neighborhood. We call this projection. Projection is the shadow's favorite rideshare app. You exile a trait, it hails a ride on someone else. Disown your competitiveness, and suddenly your friend's small promotion looks like a moral crime. Disown your sexuality, and your neighbor's outfits become a public menace. Disown your capacity for conflict, and you'll meet toxic people on every aisle at Target. The shadow says, if I can't live in you, I will live in your judgments. Psychology gives us more texture here. Your brain toggles between the task-positive network, focused, linear, doing, and the default mode network, wandering, autobiographical, meaning-making. Persona loves the task network lists, goals, performance. Shadow lives in the default mode dreams, day fantasies, little intrusive scenes that play at red lights. When you starve the wandering system, no daydreaming. Be useful. It doesn't die. It reroutes. 3 a.m. Worry loops, irritability with no label, the sudden urge to blow up a perfectly decent relationship for reasons. The mind will tell your story one way or another. Inner philosophy not as a scolding parent, but as a translator. Nietzsche dared you to become who you are, which sounds glamorous until you realize the first step is meeting who you've refused to be. He split the aesthetic soul into Apollonian order, clarity, restraint, and Dionysian ecstasy, chaos, life force. Modern culture overfeeds Apollo and arrests Dionysus. The result? A poised persona with a thirsty shadow. You can feel the thirst in the tiny overreactions. Why did Emma's mild feedback feel like a public trial? Because your exiled anger heard a drum and tried to march. Schopenhauer, gloomily helpful, said the world is representation riding on will, a deep, blind striving that laughs at our polite stories. You curate representation, persona, while will, shadow, pushes its way through anyway. That push isn't evil, it's energy. Energy needs form. Without form, it leaks. Sarcasm, passive aggression, sudden ghosting, compulsive busyness, the hero complex that rescues others to avoid rescuing yourself. Let's give the theory some shoes. Ava, raised in a family where tears were drama, becomes a star fixer. She can triage anyone else's crisis by dinner. Ask how she feels, and she fogs up like a bathroom mirror. Her shadow holds grief. It sneaks out as back pain. Noah prides himself on fairness, so he disowns ambition. Now he calls every ambitious person fake. His shadow holds desire. It sneaks out as late-night envy scrolls. Liam, a therapist in training, talks compassion all day. Then his partner forgets to buy oat milk, and he delivers a TED Talk with footnotes. His shadow holds control. It sneaks out as righteousness. Notice the comic detail. The shadow loves costumes. Grief wears the mask of sarcasm. Desire dresses as moral critique. Control perfumes itself as concern. If you listen only to costumes, you'll argue with disguises forever. But wait, you ask, don't some traits genuinely need restraint? Do I really want to unleash my envy, lust, rage? Fair point. Integration isn't confession night at the circus. It's naming without kneeling. Anger becomes boundary energy. Envy becomes directional intelligence. That's what I want. Control becomes structure. That's how I'm safe. The raw materials aren't sins. They're unfinished tools. The persona throws them away. The adult forges them. Back to Jung for a breath. He argued that health isn't sainthood. It's wholeness. Individuation, the process of becoming yourself, looks less like polishing a halo and more like learning to host a complicated house. The shadow isn't a squatter. It's a relative you stopped inviting because they told the truth too loudly at Thanksgiving. You don't give them the deed. You give them a chair and rules and respect. So why is this hard still? Because your earliest nervous system math equated honesty with danger. That math doesn't update just because your adult life is safer. The amygdala keeps a sticky archive. One raised eyebrow from a manager equals the first-grade teacher's sigh. One unread text equals abandonment. The body is efficient and a little dumb. It recycles alarms. Society amplifies the alarms with a megaphone. Performative goodness rewards the smooth surface. Virtue as optics, outrage as currency, certainty as merch. If you keep your doubts and darker wishes underground, the algorithm will happily rent them out to whoever offers a louder version tribes that supply instant identity. We are the kind ones. We are the brave ones. We are the pure ones. Now your shadow votes in public with a yard sign. From there, intimacy gets replaced by alignment, conversation by slogans, curiosity by certainty. You feel safer and lonelier at the same time. Humor check. Imagine your inner life as a boardroom. At the head sits CEOpersona.com, well hydrated, using phrases like circle back. Around the table, anger in a leather jacket, envy with a highlighter, fear under a hoodie. Desire texting under the table, grief bringing snacks, because of course she does. The current policy, only CEO speaks. Everyone else may submit feedback via anonymous suggestion box, which is a trash can. How's that going? Look at your migraines. Look at your mysterious procrastination. Look at the text you keep rewriting and never sending. The board is already running the company from the parking lot. At this point, you may feel the room tilt. If the shadow is this wired into my choices, have I been performing my life more than living it? That's the right unease. It means the X-ray is working. But don't grab for solutions yet. First, honor the scope of the thing. You're not wrestling a bad habit. You're revising a myth about what counts as you. So we hold the paradox open. The persona isn't a lie. It's incomplete. The shadow isn't a monster. It's unmentored energy. Philosophy offers the frame. Psychology offers the map. Culture supplies the weather report. And you, all of you, are the traveler. Before we talk about exits, you need to know what happens if you don't take one. Because shadows don't vanish. They accumulate interest. Let's turn from origins to outcomes, the quiet consequences that shape your body, your relationships, and, yes, the world you help build when you're not looking. Let's follow the X-ray past origins into outcomes, how the hidden layer quietly drafts your days. Think small first, because that's where the shadow prefers to work. Micro movements that look like personality but feel like fate. You tell yourself you're just not a morning person, but really you're dodging the silence when your thoughts are loudest. You say you're bad at conflict, but oddly you find yourself in jobs and relationships where unspoken tension runs like an underground river. You label it coincidence. The shadow calls it programming. Here's a private inventory you rarely take out loud. The email you avoid for 9 hours, that would take 9 minutes. The apology you craft into a moral essay because sorry would reveal a bruise. The compliment that tastes like lemon because someone else got what your bones wanted. The way your laugh gets half an octave higher when you're not telling the truth. Yes. At the personal level, the shadow shows up as micro-betrayals, not the cinematic ones, the Tuesday ones. You promise yourself you'll leave on time. You don't. You promise you'll speak up. You don't. You promise you'll rest. You scroll. Each is a paper cut. One doesn't matter. 1,000 make a map. Meanwhile, your body keeps writing footnotes. Sleep turns shallow. Breath rises to the clavicles. Shoulders wear imaginary earrings. Your stomach keeps a diary you don't read. You call it my usual. Your nervous system calls it overdrive. You might not name emotions easily. There's even a word for that. Alexithymia. But your jaw has an advanced vocabulary. Biases lend a hand. The confirmation bias makes you notice only the data that keeps your mask in place. See? Everyone thinks I'm fine. The fundamental attribution error helps you cast yourself as noble, overworked, misunderstood, while others become villains, careless, entitled. The availability heuristic makes the worst-case clip reel available on demand. The brain streams it in 4 Kelvin whenever a text arrives with, "Can we talk?" The negativity bias ensures a single critical sentence outweighs a chapter of praise because your shadow hears only what threatens exile. Now, zoom out. Relationships become theaters where the shadow auditions new roles. Grace, who swallowed her anger in childhood, becomes the over-accommodating partner who never gets mad. A phrase her therapist translates as stores uranium. One day she knocks over a cereal bowl and cries like a storm because the bowl isn't the bowl, it's the backlog. Ethan, who grew up praised for independence, dates people who need rescuing. He calls it chemistry. His shadow calls it control with good lighting. Sophia cannot tolerate being misunderstood. She writes texts like legal briefs. Her friends feel cross-examined and drift. She says, "People always leave." The pattern says, "You can't let them stay unless they agree with your script." Groups scale the problem. A team with a nice culture becomes a place where bad ideas wear polite sweaters and never get challenged. Decisions rot in consensus. Frustration doesn't vanish. It side channels into private Slacks and performative meetings where everyone says, "Great point," and nobody means it. Toxicity doesn't require shouting. It grows just fine on smiles. The shadow of the group, cowardice in virtue's clothing, produces paralysis. Eventually someone brave leaves, and the exit interview reads like poetry about weather. Wider still, the social shadow turns strangers into screens for our unowned parts. Outrage becomes a hobby, certainty a diet. Algorithms are built to monetize attention, and nothing holds attention like unintegrated emotion. If your anger can't speak with you, it will shout with a tribe. If your envy can't direct you, it will punish a celebrity. If your fear can't be named, it will be purchased by any narrative that offers a villain. The shadow loves simple stories. So does the feed. There's a cost you don't see until it's late. Impoverished freedom. You think you're choosing. Often you're confirming a bias you never consented to. You curate friends who confirm your persona and enemies who carry your shadow. Your opinions feel like convictions. Many are just protective reflexes with a good tailor. Let's make this gentler and closer. Caleb leads a nonprofit and prides himself on compassion. In meetings, he softens every hard message until the team can't find the content. When deadlines slip, he stays late. At home, he is a ghost who still answers emails. He tells himself this is what it means to care. His partner calls it absence with good intentions. Caleb's shadow anger as boundary energy was exiled so thoroughly it can only visit as exhaustion. He dreams he's trying to shout, but the sound won't come. Nora, a medical resident, keeps meticulous notebooks and an immaculate kitchen and cannot sit still for 6 minutes. Control looks like competence, which gets her praised, which starves the part of her that wants to cry after a night shift. She calls her tears a waste of time. Her back calls them gravity. She's afraid if she cracks, she'll break. The truth. What breaks is the mask that calls cracking a failure. Jasmine grew up in a church that confused dissent with betrayal. As an adult, she joins communities that reward harmony. She tells herself she's finally found home, but every time she disagrees, she dissociates for 10 seconds and returns with a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I'm learning to be gracious," she says. Her shadow hears, "disappear to survive." She writes poems she never shares. If you don't interrupt this, the shadow hardens into identity. You start saying, I'm just not emotional. I'm the responsible one. I hate drama. I'm always the giver. Useful sentences sometimes, prisons more often. Watch for absolutes. They are usually bandages over something living. The urgency isn't moral, it's mathematical. Every day you continue the pattern, interest accrues. In your muscles, in your inbox, in your relationships, in your feed. The bill arrives as burnout you label mysterious, as a relationship that feels like parallel monologues, as a life that looks good on paper and thin in the middle. You can outrun many things. You cannot outrun yourself. The track is circular. I know, because you've been here before. Maybe you're here now. You have a good life, and inside it, a restlessness you scold. You suspect your kindness sometimes serves fear. Your humility sometimes hides ambition. Your calm sometimes covers grief. You aren't wrong. That suspicion is your healthiest instinct peeking through, the part that refuses to accept a museum label as a soul. But please notice what I'm not doing. I'm not handing you a 5-step cure with confetti. Not yet. Quick fixes address symptoms. The shadow is a structure. It was built slowly by love and fear and culture and luck. It will be unbuilt, not smashed by a different kind of slow, attention, naming, consent. We'll get there. First, I want you to feel the shape of the cage, because rebellion makes sense only when you know what you're leaving. So take one more pass through the gallery in your mind. The varnish face looks flawless and far away. The underpainting looks messy and near. You don't have to pick one. You have to learn to paint with both. But how do you start without turning your life into a self-help boot camp? How do you invite a banished drummer back into the band without blowing the speakers? Hold that question like a warm cup. We'll answer it not with a sermon, but with a series of small, almost impolite invitations. Not with a war, but with a truce. Rebellion doesn't begin with a trumpet. It begins with a chair, one pulled up for the part of you you've kept standing in the doorway. Not a throne, not a spotlight, just a seat at the table. The first rule of shadow work is disarmingly small. Before you react, breathe once. Call it the one-breath rebellion. Your manager says, "Can we chat?" Your stomach tries parkour. Instead of replying in 0.3 seconds with a performance of either eagerness or avoidance, you inhale for 4, exhale for 6. The extra oxygen is not romantic. It's mechanical. You're buying your prefrontal cortex a cappuccino so it can return to work and escort your amygdala gently back to its seat. Now give that breath something to do. Name the parts out loud in your head. A part of me is scared. A part of me wants to impress. A part of me is angry. I always get pinged at 5:58 p.m. This is internal family systems without incense. No mysticism required. Just grammar that stops you from becoming your emotion. You are not panic. You are a person having panic, and a person can make choices that panic cannot. Let's make this practical and a little funny, because humor oils the gears. Start a trigger log, 2 columns in your notes app. Left. What poked me? Emma's tone. Alex's win. Can we talk? The word actually in someone's email? Right. What did that poke think it was saving? My worth, my time, my image, my place at the table. You're not collecting pain. You're collecting patterns. After a week, you'll notice you don't have 100 triggers. You have 4 in trench coats. Now try the shadow's favorite exercise done backwards, projection recall. The next time someone fascinates or infuriates you beyond proportion, write a 3 times 3. 3 traits I condemn in them: showy, ruthless, needy. 3 traits I adore in them: unapologetic, creative, magnetic. 3 sentences that reclaim a piece. When I call her showy, a part of me is terrified of being seen. When I call him ruthless, a part of me wants permission to choose myself. When I call them needy, a part of me longs to need out loud. You're not absolving anyone of being a handful. You're repossessing the parts of you lease to strangers. Anger? Don't vent it at people like a confetti cannon. Channel it into boundary energy. Script 2 sentences you can use without shaking. Soft boundary. I can't take this on today. I'm at capacity. Firm boundary with hospitality. I can't do Saturday, but I can help you outline the plan on Friday for 20 minutes. No is a full sentence, yes, but a little kind scaffolding helps it stand upright in real life. Envy? Treat it like directional intelligence. Write jealousy letters you don't send. Dear Taylor, When you got that fellowship, I felt small and then pretended I didn't. Underneath, I want what you have. Time to write without begging, hours from sleep. Love, the honest me. Now reduce the letter to a compass. I want dedicated writing hours. That's not a sin, that's a calendar event. Control, offer it a job title. Control is terrible as CEO, excellent as chief of structure. Let it design the container, time blocks, checklists, mise en place, but keep it out of HR and PR. A playful rule helps. Structure ends at 7 p.m. After that, wonder is on duty. Grief? Stop asking it to make an appointment. Build a tiny ritual that never requires a crisis. A 5-minute dusk sit, a candle after hard conversations, a song you allow to finish even if you tear up at minute 2. Grief is the quiet accountant of meaning. If you pay its small invoices on time, it won't hand you a terrifying bill later. Repair is a rebel art. The shadow apology is short and surgical. Name the part. A scared part of me got loud. Name the impact. It made you feel small. Name the boundary. Need. Next time I'll ask for time instead of lecturing. Then stop. Don't litigate your childhood. Don't submit exhibits A through Q. Keep dignity for both sides. Let's put shoes on these ideas. Morgan, the office diplomat with the dentist's report, tries the one-breath rebellion in Tuesday's meeting. When the project gets dumped in her lap with, "You're so good at this," her mouth opens for the reflexive, "Yes." She breathes once. Sip air, count 4. Then, "I can lead the kickoff, and I'll need a co-owner for execution." The room tilts but doesn't fall. Someone says, "I can co-own." Later that night, her jaw doesn't click while she brushes her teeth. That's not a miracle, that's mechanics. Noah, the fairness purist who doom-scrolls other people's wins, does a projection recall at 10:11 p.m. He writes, "Showy, opportunistic, shameless, magnetic, clear, consistent." His reclaimed sentence stings and helps. When I sneer at their self-promotion, a part of me is asking for permission to declare what I do. The next morning, he posts a simple portfolio link, not a manifesto, just a visible self. Nobody dies. Grace, the star mother who dreams of hotel rooms with no crayons, practices the shadow apology with her 8-year-old after snapping about shoes. A tired part of me got bossy. That probably felt bad. Next time, I'll ask for help before I get mean. Her child nods, then asks if mean moms still get bedtime stories. They do. Grace cries in front of someone for the first time that week. Nothing breaks. Something opens. History offers companions. Abraham Lincoln built a team of rivals, inviting dissent to sit beside him because he knew his own blind spots. Integration at the national level looks like shadow work at the dinner table. You don't replace opponents with clones. You host what you'd rather mute, so the outcome is wiser than any single temperament. Marcus Aurelius practiced night journaling, stoic, yes, but also shadow-friendly. He put his pettiness, vanity, fear on paper so they didn't run the empire. James Baldwin refused to waste his anger. He refined it into clarity and compassion that could cut marble. Carl Jung drew mandalas not as decor, but as daily negotiations between the many selves that wanted the wheel. None of these were saints by accident. They were craftspeople of their contradictions. A few more maneuvers for your pocket? The 90-second window neuroscientist Jill Bolte Taylor notes that a pure emotion's chemical life is about 90 seconds unless your mind refuels it with story. When you're flaming, set a timer. Breathe the burn. Don't narrate. Most fires fall below hazard level by the ding. The 2-chair talk. Put 2 chairs facing each other. Sit in one as persona, the other as shadow. Swap every 2 minutes. It will feel ridiculous. Then it will feel like honesty with furniture. Dream seeds. Before sleep, whisper one question onto the pillow. What does my anger want for me? Keep a pen bedside. Harvest in the morning without judgment. Boundary sandwich. Complement to boundary to alternative. I love how thorough you are. I can't review this tonight. Send me top 3 questions and I'll respond by noon. Notice the theme. You are not trying to win against your shadow. You're trying to work with the energy it contains, the way a sailor trims sails to wind instead of yelling at the weather. The paradox becomes your teacher. The more you try to crush apart, the stronger it gets. The more you give it a role with rules, the more it cooperates. Will you nail this every day? Number, you will forget. Overpromise. Ghost, doom scroll, Pick a fight with a bowl, that's fine. We're not writing a new persona called Enlightened You. We're practicing a different posture, less performance, more presence, fewer explanations, truer sentences. Small wins accrue interest, too. One breath becomes a tone, shift becomes a boundary, becomes a weekend that actually restores you. One honest sentence becomes a conversation, becomes a culture at your table where people tell the truth without losing love. And that is the quiet victory of rebellion, not louder armor, but softer nerve. You can stand in a room with all your parts present and not feel like a hostage of any of them. The inner boardroom stops holding meetings in the parking lot. They come inside. They pass motions. They adjourn at a reasonable hour. If you're sensing it, we're close to the thing beneath the techniques, the insight that changes not just what you do, but who is doing it. The painter, not only the paint. The hand, not only the brush. Let's go there next, not with a doctrine, but with a doorway. The Unseen Self, A Calm Shadow Journey, Part 5. The Final Truth, a life-changing insight, approximately 901,000 words. Stand with me one last time in that museum. The guard is clicking his keys. The floor is a quiet lake of light. In front of you hangs the portrait, surface and underpainting layered into one gaze. You've learned to spot the varnish and the sketch. You've given the draft a chair. You've practiced the one-breath rebellion and the small rituals that turn chaos into companions. Now comes the turn that isn't a trick, the insight that changes not only your methods, but your metrics. It's this. Maturity isn't the victory of one part over another. It's the capacity to carry opposites without splitting. You are not aiming to be less contradictory. You are learning to be large. The goal isn't to delete anger or envy or control. It's to give their energy honest work in the city of your life. A well-run city doesn't exile citizens. It assigns them roles, writes laws, builds parks, funds repair. You've suspected this already. Every time you tried to be only kind, you became resentful. Every time you tried to be only brave, you became brittle. Every time you tried to be only calm, you became numb. Single adjective lives are easy to market and hard to live. Wholeness is messier and alive. Philosophy has been saying this in different dialects. Aristotle's golden mean isn't beige compromise. It's dynamic balance, courage tuned between cowardice and recklessness. Taoism's water isn't passive. It's persistent in shaping. Nietzsche's become who you are isn't narcissism. It's responsibility. Stop outsourcing your power to masks and mobs. Jung's individuation isn't sainthood. It's roundness the self as a sphere that contains and orders the fragments. Translated into your kitchen at 7:23 p.m., it sounds like this. Use the whole choir. Let kindness sing, yes, but let anger keep time. Let desire add harmony. Let grief give the melody depth. Let fear tune the pitch so you don't blow your voice. One song, many voices. When a choir sings well, you don't hear parts fighting, you hear parts listening. What, then, is freedom? Not the absence of impulses and not the tyranny of one. Freedom is a vote taken with everyone present. Persona speaks, shadow speaks, body speaks. History raises a hand. Future clears her throat. Love asks a question. Fear asks too. Courage moves. We adjourn for breath. Then you choose. The choice may look identical from the outside, yes, no, later, but the texture inside is different. It feels like alignment instead of appeasement, dignity instead of performance, warmth instead of static. Fine, you say, but how do I know I'm choosing with the whole choir and not just the loudest soloist in a costume? 3 cues. The aftertaste test. Performative decisions taste sweet and then metallic. Integrated decisions taste plain and then nourishing. The breath test. If the breath drops into the belly after you speak, you're closer to truth. If it climbs your throat and camps behind your eyes, you just made a deal with fear. The tomorrow test. If your decision demands a fresh explanation every hour, it's a mask. If it becomes quiet tomorrow, it's a fit. Notice how unglamorous this is. There's no fireworks, no mountain applause. The revolution of integration sounds like doors quietly clicking into place. Think of our friends. Morgan, the diplomat, will still say yes sometimes. But her yes will come with a shape. Yes to kickoff, co-owner required. Noah will still care about fairness, and now he will also claim his lane without spitting on others. Grace will still love her children, and now she'll love them as a person with needs who names them, which teaches them the gospel she never heard. I can be loved when I am real. Liam will still deliver speeches, but after the one breath and on a smaller stage. What about the big grief, the wasted years, the lost chances, the versions of you who didn't know how? The shadow often guards a door labeled regret. Here is the gentlest truth and the boldest. You do not need to erase your past to integrate your present. You don't airbrush the portrait, you sign it with today's date and hang it in a better light. Regret can be a prison warden or a curator who writes a new placard. This work shows early signs of the artist's later strength. Let the museum laugh. You've earned the caption. If you want a single, simple line to carry into ordinary rooms, let it be this. Nothing human is foreign here. Not in you, not in the person across the table. When anger visits, you say, you belong. Take this job, protect the boundary. When envy knocks, you belong. Point where I'm called. When control storms in, you belong. Draft the plan, then sit down while wonder improvises. When grief arrives without flowers, you set another place. You feed it soup, you sleep. But don't mistake inclusion for indulgence. Integration has ethics. The rule is not everything goes, it's everything belongs, and everything is responsible. Anger that harms loses its license. Desire that lies is benched. Fear that spreads rumor is asked for sources. The city is kind and strict. That's how you keep the lights on. And here is the final turn, the one that gives the work its warmth. You thought shadow work was about you. It is, and it is also about us. People feel safer around integrated humans. You're less likely to recruit them into your old plays. You stop needing villains to prove you're good, props to prove you're strong, audiences to prove you're real. You free others from carrying your exiles. Intimacy becomes possible because projection becomes optional. Culture changes because kitchens change, boardrooms change, timelines change, group chats grow quiet and kind. The guard coughs. It's time to go. Take a last look at the portrait. In certain light, you can still glimpse the first mouth under the final one. You could call that a flaw. Or you could call it depth, a life that didn't amputate its versions, a face that learned to keep company with its beginnings. You step out into evening air. The city hums its complicated chord. Somewhere a bus sighs, a couple laughs, a window glows. You feel the familiar chime of a message on your phone and let it be. You breathe once a small, almost impolite pause and feel the choir shift their chairs. Anger nods from percussion. Desire checks the key. Grief warms up the cello. Fear straightens the sheet music. Kindness lifts her hands. You give the downbeat no one else can hear. Walk home like that, unhurried, unhidden, unfinished. When you turn the key, leave one lamp on for the bottom layer, not to interrogate it, to welcome it. Pour water. Write one plain sentence you don't have to explain. Sit where you would usually stand. If you pray, pray like this. Nothing human is foreign here. If you don't, breathe like this. In for 4, out for 6, until your edges soften. You won't do this perfectly. Perfect isn't the metric anymore. Presence is. Some nights you'll forget and sprint. Some mornings you'll remember and stay. That's a life, not a test. That's art, not a product. That's a portrait with history showing through your history, now part of the beauty. And when sleep comes, let it find all of you in the same room at last, the surface, and the sketch breathing together, painting tomorrow's face from the inside out.